Well, good morning, everyone. Andrew Kircher here with Port Huron Museums. I know it feels like a really long time since we've gotten a chance to do one of our walking tours. So maybe if you haven't seen one of these before or haven't checked out the back catalog, it's a great opportunity. We've been doing these since kind of the beginning of the lockdown, the pandemic. It's been a great chance to get out and look at some of the buildings in Port Huron and learn a little bit about the history about some of the buildings that we drive past every day. So today was a really nice day. It's really pleasant out, and I thought this would be a great chance to go on a little walk. And we're going to go up and check out a building that actually we had a special request by. I got a message on our Facebook page, and I always do our best to try and honor those. A guy, Craig. Hopefully you're watching. I'll tag you in the comments as soon as I'm done filming, in case you aren't happen to be watching right now. But you'll get to see, so I'm looking to cross the street here, this little special video we're doing on Washington School. So we had a special request. All right, let me flip things around here. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay, so if you are playing along at home, we're right now at 6th and Oak Street. So Oak and Griswold are these kind of two arteries through the middle of town that run east and west, and they're one-way streets. Everybody's probably driven down Oak or Griswold at one point or another. And you know, we may have walked down a little bit of this route before, but like I said, we've been doing these a while and maybe not everyone has seen them. So we can look at a couple of the buildings on the way. I always really like, this is really close to where I live. I live like back there. I actually live in Military. It probably won't surprise anyone to know I live in a old house, but I always really like this garage. It's kind of a craftsman style because there's a whole like room up above the garage. I don't know what's up there. It's really cool. If anybody knows, let me know. But we're walking through, of course, some of the older parts of Port Huron today. We've just got a couple of blocks to go. It's absolutely a day to go out and enjoy walking. You know, it has been so hot and humid and kind of miserable. I don't really enjoy that very much. But today it's finally cooled right off, and you can't beat this at all. A few people are telling me hello Terry. I'm so glad to see some people are tuning in. So one of the cool things that I really like doing is reading about Port Huron history and reading about buildings that aren't here. There's some great video series. If you follow the Port Huron history page, there are some great videos. I've been checking some of those out recently. They're really interesting to watch, not only for the buildings that are here, but the buildings that were here. So we're here at Oak and 7th, and this is some relatively new construction, and it's some of my favorite new homes in the city. I would call these like Queen Anne revival. So a lot of new construction. I'll be honest, this is editorializing. I'm not a fan of the recent trend of putting an enormous garage in front of your house and the house is just tacked on the rear. If you take a look at any new subdivision, that's typically what you'll see. But these homes, what they've done, see, Queen Anne homes, which I think we've talked about a little bit before, Queen Anne homes are typically asymmetrical. They have a porch, they have a combination of features. These were really popular starting in like the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. And these are definitely pretty modern interpretations of that. But since these homes were originally built in the 1880s, most of them were not built with garages. But today, for better or for worse, I think a lot of times maybe for worse, we really rely on automobiles, and everybody needs a garage. But what they've done here is they have made kind of a central area in this block, and all the garages are behind the house. So I have a garage at my house. Even though my house was built in 1886 or so, the garage is behind it. And some of them were originally carriage houses. A lot of those garages were built like in the 1920s and 30s as people started to get cars. But this is a great way to do that kind of modern construction. They always intended to have a garage that is in the back of the house. So you've got a place to park, you can come in, but you have these great lawns that you wouldn't see in a modern subdivision, these little tiny front yards, and you don't have this great big driveway, a great big mall leading in to your house. All right, so on this lot, I can tell you there's also something pretty interesting here. This was one of the original spots, and we'll walk back here. You'll get to see these garage. Oh, Loretta says I might have made a typo in the title. I'll have to check that when I'm not live anymore. So we're going to Washington Junior High. It's actually the second of two schools named for George Washington. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we actually get to the school. So here's what I was talking about. We can see, you know, the backs of these homes. So these would have all of the, you know, modern conveniences. You know, they're wired normally. Probably a lot of them have, you know, air conditioning, but they also have these nice matched garages back here with this kind of central area that you can pull in and use. I really like that. So I think that's a great way. I'd love to see more new construction like that. I mean, there's always something to be said for new and different styles, but there's also something to be said for construction that is reminiscent of something we already had. And of course there are, you know, some original pieces. I know we've talked about this house before because it's the house with the giant forehead. I really like the huge gable. You'll see what I mean when we get across here. Got some folks working out in the community garden. It's always nice to see those on an extra lot of land. So as we cross Griswold here, you can see that giant forehead house. There's another good kind of Queen Anne, a little bit of a stick style home. Now, like I said, we're going to talk about the schools a little bit. We're going to walk by Woodrow Wilson. Hello. Yeah, we're doing a live tour for Port Huron Museums. So, sorry if it's a little loud, doing a little agricultural work. All right, so we're coming up on Woodrow Wilson School, which is now this school dates to, I think, 1952 or so. And that puts this firmly in the schools that we built for the baby boom generation, which makes a whole lot of sense when you have these large influx of babies born right after World War II. By the mid-1950s, they're all going to elementary school. A lot of new schools were built at that time. There's probably, I think we've talked about this in a video before, there's probably more that can be said about Woodrow Wilson, but I want to talk about Washington, which is the school we're coming up on, which is a pretty neat place. So, we've talked a little bit about styles. I guess while we're walking here, we've got about another block or so before we can maybe even see the school. We can kind of see it here through the trees. I'll give you guys some museum updates. So we still are at 3 sites. So the Edison Depot, the Thomas Edison Depot, the Carnegie Center, and of course the light station are open at kind of the new regular schedule we've established of Wednesday through Sunday from 12 to 4. We are also still doing rentals, so if you've got an event that maybe you're not so comfortable with doing it inside, you want to use a place like the Lighthouse grounds to have things outside where you can spread out a little bit more, that's something we can help you with. Give us a call or shoot a message to the museum. We would love to do that. Now the Huron, I get a lot of questions about that. I have heard a small update. Engineers have taken a look from the city, and unfortunately there's really not much that can be done until the water level stabilizes. As we know, the high water level kicked the Huron up about 14 inches or so, really did a number on the electrical system and the gas system. I know one of our big concerns is the cathode system. So it's something you don't see. It's definitely like an out of sight, out of mind. Nobody at all thinks about this cathode system, but we've got a steel-hulled ship in the water, and or not in the water, but in like just wet ground, and there's a very good chance it would rust out. So what they did was they buried some steel cables down in that little area where the Huron is. They run some low voltage electricity through it, and then those cables rust rather than the ship itself. And we're worried that may have been damaged a little bit when the ship decided to start moving around again. But It was supposed to stop moving 50 years ago. 50 years ago this month was the last time the Huron was out and about, actually still on station at Corsica Shoals. So that one still won't be open for the foreseeable future. We'll be sure to keep one of everyone posted, but our other sites are open. And we've also decided to just kind of keep our hours as long as it works. Normally it's about this time of year we start dialing back our hours as everyone starts going back to school, but as we all know, this year is a pretty weird year. So we're gonna play it by ear. All right, so we have walked, again, that extra block, and now we can see, again, Woodrow Wilson back here. This is, I think it's called White Park. The park here, one of the neat things about this park, this was actually the site of the first Port Huron Hospital. It's like the middle of that field. It goes back quite a ways. And here we have Washington Junior High. Now, I mentioned that this is the second Washington school. At this point, I would kind of be highly suspect that anyone went to the original Washington school because, again, they changed the name in 1918. So just a little over 100 years ago, they needed to build a new school. And they wanted, this school is obviously a very impressive build. This has got to be probably the second most impressive school after the Port Huron High School, which would be like the third one. The one that's now SC4, that was built in 1904, 1905, right around there. So, after they built this new building, they said, well, we want to give this an appropriate name with all the money we spent on it. We're going to name it after George Washington. Just keep in mind, a lot of the schools, Port Huron started naming the schools really only in 1892. Before that, the schools were just referred to by the ward that they were in, like the second ward school. And it can be very confusing to figure out which school is which. It's probably a really good thing in 1892 they decided to name all of the schools after presidents. But since it's the 1890s, a lot of the presidents we know and think about today had not been president yet. So they were kind of working with a more disappointing stock, so to say. So that's how you have schools named after like Millard Fillmore and Franklin Pierce. These are not presidents that are well remembered today, but if it's 1890, you've got less presidents to choose from. But since this was going to be the most impressive school in the district, we'll walk up here to the corner and maybe walk across the street and get a closer look. They wanted to name it after President Washington. The problem was there was already a school named for Washington that was at like 7th and Court Street or so, right where I think the First Congregational Church is today. That actually, I just saw they sold that. I wonder who bought it. So that school they renamed. They renamed that to Zachary Taylor, which that's another thing that gets very confusing, is there's a Taylor and a Tyler. A lot of people confuse those presidents. I wonder if anyone ever confused the school. So they renamed that. That got downgraded from Washington to Zach Taylor School. And then this became Washington Junior High in, again, 1918. So right at the end of World War I. People were really forward thinking in Port Huron. They knew there was going to be need for bigger schools. Now keep in mind, in the 19-teens, in the 1920s, not everyone went to high school. This is something that, we think today that a high school education is just kind of like a rite of passage. Everyone does that. Oh, hey, we can go see the Cornerstone right up here. I always like looking at those. Proves them right? 1918. Today we think about high school as kind of like a rite of passage. Like everyone, almost everyone, passes high school. There we go, AD 1918. And this obviously had some upgrades and modifications over the years. This was an active school until I think about 1981 or 82. So a lot of kids went to school here. Maybe you guys did. Some of the people watching have gone to the school here, and you can post some of your memories or things you think about in here. We can see it's carved Washington School. Now it might be really hard to see, but up here there's like a big wreath, and in the middle it says 1918. It's got the year right up there, which is pretty cool. So now, like I was saying, high school is a rite of passage, but in the 1920s, a sizable number of people did not go to high school. For example, my great-grandfather, he was born in about 1913, and he got an 8th grade education. That's really all he needed. He did not go on to high school. So this junior high, this kind of was its own rite of passage, because I think that was the requirement at the time, that everyone had to go through at least 8th grade. And also at this time, right up until the 1950s, they separated 9th grade from high school. I think it was the early 60s that high school became, at least in the Port Huron area school district, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm sure there are people who maybe remember when high school was that. They'll tell me in the comments they can remember that. But so this was this kind of grand passage. So this is pretty crazy for what is in essence a middle school, to think about how impressive of a building this is. Now it's kind of a neoclassical style. Obviously we've got some columns here, we've got some arches between the columns, that's a little Romanesque. But in the 19 teens and 20s, there's a lot of brickwork in this, and the brickwork itself is pretty decorative. So we can see these long pieces up and down here. This brickwork does a lot of the decorating. And if you compare this to something that was built even just 20 years before, think about that main building at SC4 that was the high school. It's got these great big quoins on the corners and the first whole floor. There's some like cement work. There's really a movement in the country going on at that time. There's the arts and crafts movement. There's also kind of the craftsman movement. And the idea of these movements, here I'm going to come over to the side. Oh, hi squirrel. Complete aside, I really love the front window over here. This is a great 1950s front window. But we've come over to the side here. We can see, again, more of this brickwork is used for decoration. They're not adding that's something else to the building. They're adding this, it's right built into the structure. And that fits right in line with this craftsman movement. The whole idea of the craftsman movement was to be true to the materials you're using. Don't try and hide it. Don't try and disguise it. It was a response to these very ornate kind of Queen Anne style buildings. They're using very fancy things. Sometimes you hear the Gilded Age. That's the 1870s, the 1880s. It's because they're putting, they were gilding things, making things look gold that weren't really gold. So you're making things out to be what they really weren't. And this was a response to that, saying like, there's nothing wrong with brick. Brick's a cool thing. It can be beautiful on its own. We don't need to disguise or hide that brick. We can see they did add on to the school. This part here, I know people have asked in the questions here, what are these buildings now? Well, back here, this is now a church. I think the Only Believe ministry. We can see they added a garage right tacked on to the back of the building here. And we'll go, I guess, around the block here and we can get a better view of the other side, the south side of the building. Now, one of the other neat things about this building that's maybe not, this isn't at all evident from just looking at it, is the designer. So George L. Harvey was the architect who designed this building. George Harvey's a cool guy. I'd love to read a biography of him. I'm sure none is written. Maybe I'll have to write one. I don't know. But George Harvey was from Port Huron, and he's responsible for a lot of the buildings in town. So he designed the Maccabees Temple. He was born in 1870. He lived till about 1947. And he designed a lot of buildings in town, especially starting in the 1890s. Once he was about 20 years old, he is working left and right on buildings all over the town. A lot of things that we have talked about. And in the 1930s, he's a pretty well-respected guy. He actually is elected mayor. So he is mayor in the 1930s. He even helps design, at least members of his architectural firm, helps design some of the really cool Art Deco toll booths on the Blue Water Bridge. So it's neat. He's at the dedication of the bridge, and I imagine he's kind of loving it for two reasons, because he's mayor of the city, and he also helped design some of the things that he's helping to dedicate. So that's pretty cool. All right, we're back around here. There's kind of an alleyway back here. Maybe we'll sneak down it just to get a look at the back of the building. We can see again this expansion kind of isn't symmetrical or anything like that. It just kind of sticks out on the one side of things. I'm thinking this alley might pop through here. But we can see there is a little bit of brick cladding that is starting to come off in the back here. But it's a pretty solid structure. Brick's not something you mess around with a whole lot. Okay, we'll have to double track our steps here. But here's a view a lot of people might not see. The back of the building here looks like there's a neat little rear entrance down here, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe somebody could tell me. It looks like there are some louvers, but there is a little door, so maybe an entrance at some kind. So this is clearly sunk in just a little bit. We can see where unfortunately some of the bricks come off on the side there, but not surprising with a building of this age and this size. All right, we're gonna pop back through boiler room. So that's kind of what I figured. Something very utility. Thank you, Tyler. So Tyler commented earlier that he's got a studio there. So evidently there are some studios there. I know that this main part of the building, there is kind of a salvage, like an architectural salvage shop. And they've also done some estate sales, like they've taken large estates, lots of bulk furniture in the gym, because I've been to a couple of those, which is really handy. I love architectural salvage. You know, when you tear down a building, especially an old building, it's always kind of sad, although sometimes, you know, it needs to be done. It's always great when they can save things, everything from doorknobs to pillars, newel posts, closet doors, things like that. Those are some interesting things that people with old houses really like, and they're really glad that they saved. So it sounds like there's some studio space upstairs. I know it's a huge building. It sold right away. At one point it was a U-Haul station or substation in, I think, the 1980s. This building sold because, just like we were talking about Woodrow Wilson, with the baby boom, they needed a ton more schools. By the 1980s, those kids, you know, were having some kids of their own, but not as many. And so school district population went down. They closed some of the schools. They had also updated a lot of the schools. By that time, this one was growing a little long in the tooth. And when you compare this to another middle school like Holland Woods, which is being built in the 70s, that would have been seen as a brand new middle school compared to this, which seems very archaic when you compare the two side by side. You can see why the school district opted to close this school and focus on the other middle schools like Holland Woods and Chippewa and Central, Fort Gratiot, once those are all amalgamated. Hello. Hi, Pooch. We're just doing a little architectural walking tour, taking a look at the Washington School. Yeah, Port Huron Museums. Yeah. Glad to hear it. We'll keep our eyes open. We'll keep our eyes open. All right, so we're off to the side here. That Pooch was just being very friendly. We can see that there have been a few more modifications. We can see that, you know, they've cut a garage door here in the side, and that might have been U-Haul who did that. But there's something really cool back here that I noticed that probably did not show up on camera. This looks like there was an entrance all the way back here. Take a look at this. Here is the girls' entrance. I'm guessing this kind of goes into the gym. There might be a boys' entrance somewhere else on the other side. But there it is, carved right in marble. It seems like this door was much more impressive at one time, because when you put kind of a standardized door in this big door frame, looks a little silly. So Tyler, you know a little bit about the building. Maybe you can tell us, where's the, maybe those, I think they're probably on the other side where the addition is. Yeah, I can see part of the door frame over there at the back of the church. So boys are over there, but we can still see the girls' entrance right over here. So that's pretty neat. There is one other neat thing that a lot of people seem to remember about these buildings. I already saw a couple comments about it, and it's the fire escape. So this is a big school. You know, it's a tall building. Fire is always kind of scary. That's one of the reasons I actually go with brick, is brick isn't flammable, but you're still scared of a fire. And we can actually, I think, still see right up here, we can see an obvious patch, and we can see an obvious break in the cornice up here. And there was basically a big metal slide as a fire escape. So if you were up on the 3rd floor, there was a fire alarm, that's how you would get out of the building, rather than, you know, like running down 2 flights of stairs where people can trip and get trampled. And honestly, that sounds like a lot of fun. I would love to go down the fire escape slide. Maybe somebody who did can tell me. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was like full of cobwebs because it didn't get used a lot. But it seems like it was a big metal slide that didn't get used a whole lot. So, man, it'd be fast, right? At least that's the thinking. I don't know. I didn't get to go down it. But how fun is that for a fire escape? Hopefully you never had to use it for real, but maybe they got to practice in fire drills. So anyway, that's a little bit about the Washington School. Like I said, it's a kind of a salvage and resale shop now, architectural salvage, which is really cool to have. You've got an older house. Oh, I got one other kind of interesting story anyway. In the 1920s, the school district actually strongly encouraged the building of a tunnel, of a subway. 10th Street here had gotten too busy. This is a story that, like, we've heard time and time again. They're getting scared of the cars and the little kids running out and getting hit by a car from motorists who weren't looking. So they suggested they should build a tunnel in the basement of the school that would go underneath 10th Street, all the way from under there, and pop up on that side so the kids could walk home in relative safety. Because 10th Street here, of course, 4 lanes wide, it was a pretty major artery of town even then. I can't imagine what it would be like in the 1920s getting ready to try and adapt to this whole new method of transportation. These automobiles would really shape your town. That's something I know we still kind of deal with today, and cars that are, or cities that are built for the car rather than a pedestrian, or rather than somebody with, you know, a horse and buggy that goes pretty slow. Yeah, so I absolutely agree. Tyler says, you know, cars are still a problem. Like I said, this is something they've known now for 90 years. After, I think, a kid was hit by a car, and they said, like, this is too dangerous. We got to find a way. Eventually, they settled on crossing guards, but they were thinking of straight up building a subway underneath 10th Street to protect kids. So that's really interesting when you think about the history of urban development here in Port Huron, and really everywhere. It's a struggle that lots of cities have. But there's a little bit about here. I can flip the camera around. We're right here at Trinity Lutheran Church, which is pretty neat. So this is, in fact, I can hear the organ from outside, which is pretty neat to be able to hear that. Trinity Lutheran here. I think this was one of the German Lutheran churches. Looks like the church is just getting out, which makes sense. It's about that time, or maybe just getting ready to welcome parishioners in. All right, so thank you all for coming along with me. Well, I got a green light across the street here, so I'm going to take it. Thanks for coming along on this little walk with me. I've got some more of these planned. I've got some more outdoor ones that are going to take maybe a little while longer, and we've been waiting for the weather to cooperate on those, and a few more indoor ones on the works. No, these haven't been as regular of an update as they have been, but we've got lots of things going on at the museum, so we are also getting ready. If you like these, you might enjoy going on a trolley with yours truly. We've got some of these planned out as far as I think November. The tickets are up and for sale. We're limiting the number on the trolleys. The tickets are limited to only 13, so that's less than half the capacity of the trolley to spread people out a little bit inside. But we're going to go around and look at some of these neighborhoods. You can see them in person rather than on your little screen there. So that'd be fun, and we're going to do those for a while. So even if you don't feel quite comfortable on these, or the tickets sell out, they're going to be coming for a while. We've got a lot of different themed ones. Our first one in September is about churches, schools, and neighborhoods. And then in October, I think the one that's going to be really popular, we have a special murder and mayhem tour. We're going to talk about some of the wild things that have happened in Port Huron's past. And I think it's on Halloween, so how much more of an appropriate day can you ask for, right? And then a business and industry one in November. So look for those on our Facebook page or our Eventbrite page, and keep your eyes posted on the page here for more of these walking tours. And like I said, this was at request. Somebody wanted to know a little bit more about Washington School, and their wish, I do everything I can to make it come true. So hopefully they'll be able to see this and enjoy it. But if you've got a building you want to know a little bit more about, or an area you don't think we've covered, shoot me a message the page. I'm always looking for more to do. So thanks for coming along, and until next time, enjoy the history here in your own backyard. Take care.